We have started a discussion on Unit 3, that is gastrointestinal agents. From the gastrointestinal agents, up till now we have discussed acidifying agents. If the person's cell line of the stomach unable to synthesize, or if there is any problem for the synthesis of hydrochloric acid, so we are going to treat this situation, that is hypochlorhydria, by giving person hydrochloric acid and ammonium chloride. Then yesterday's 2 lectures we have discussed antacids. So the classification of antacid, that is, it is classified into systemic antacid and non-systemic antacid, followed by their applications, their compounds, examples, uses, assay procedures we have discussed. Yesterday we have discussed the treatment for the diarrhea type of situation, that is cathartics, for the treatment of constipation as well as diarrhea, and the agents which are involved in that treatment we have discussed. Now, today we are going to start very important part of the syllabus, that is antimicrobial agents. Now, what are microbes? The compounds which will cause an infection or any pathogenic situation to our body. These are known as microbes. So they're not visible to the naked eyes. If you are going to study the study of microorganism, we have to use magnifying instruments, that is microscopes and all. So today we are going to discuss those antimicrobial inorganic compounds used in the therapy. Now, what are these basically? Basically, they are topical anti-infective agents. So they are topically anti-infective agents which may be applied to intact cutaneous or mucous surface. Basically, when the synthesis or the searching of antimicrobial agents has not done, so previously they are used as an topical anti-infective agents before we are going to do the surgery or for the treatment of minor cuts, abrasions, and burn. So they are topically used as an to prevent the infection to these areas where we are going to do the surgery and for the treatment of minor cuts, abrasions, and burns. Now, Koch in 1865, first of all, discovered these anti-infective agents. So he has established the relation between the infection and the microorganisms. So he has studied in depth about what are those causative organisms which are going to do the infection or which have been causing the infections to our body. So we have studied in depth, he has studied in depth about these topical anti-infective agents which was not realized earlier. So basically, we are going to use these antimicrobial for the disinfection of the hospitals, sterilization procedures, for the instrument and the surgical hand wash are the general measures we are going to treat, we are going to use as an antimicrobial agents in the hospitals and day-to-day life. Now we are in the pandemic situation of the corona, everybody knows. So we are, every time we are going to carry the sanitizer along with us because the virus is everywhere around us. To kill that virus, we are carrying that sanitizer. It is nothing but the antimicrobial only. So what is the classification of classes of these antimicrobial agents? So this topical anti-infective agents, or we can say antimicrobial agents, basically classified into 5 classes, 5 important classes. Now, what are those 5 important classes of antimicrobial agents? They are, number 1, keratolytic agent. It is an agent which is used for the sterilization or the disinfection of skin or the cell lining of our body. So it is an agent which is applied on the skin to soften the keratin. Keratin is nothing but our hair-like protein which is there in our body. So these are the agents. First class is keratolytic agents. So these are the agents which is applied on the skin to soften the keratin. So the sulfur containing and aluminum oxide containing compounds, for example, our shampoos from which we are going to clean our hairs. So this shampoo type of preparations will be coming under this keratolytic agent. Now the second class of antimicrobial agents is antiseptic agents. So we are going to do the cleaning of the wounds with the help of these iodines. That type of agents we are coming under the category of antiseptic agents. Then disinfectants, sanitizers, and germicides for the killing of the germs. Now, antimicrobials and topical anti-infective agent. What is the definition, or what we can call it as an anti-infective agent? It is an agent which kill the microorganisms, or the agent which will stop their growth. So, Ashikai agents which will kill the microorganism totally, they are going to clean, or the agent which will stop their further growth in order to do their multiplication, in order to produce their colonies. So that will be totally diminished, totally prohibited. These type of agents are coming under the category of antimicrobial agents. Now, basically, these antimicrobial, antibacterial agents are classified into two classes: bactericidal agent and bacteriostatic agent. The bactericidal belongs to killing, totally killing of the microorganisms or bacteria. That is, agent which kill the bacteria, and bacteriostatic means who will stop the growth of the bacteria. Now, some of the terminologies from this chapter, that is antimicrobial agent. First of all, what is antiseptic agent? It is an agent which will either kill or inhibit the growth of microorganism, which is when applied topically at the damaged tissue. See, clearly mentioned here, it is applied on the damaged tissue for the prevention or killing of the microorganisms. So we should apply those on the wounds, abrasions, cuts. So in order to avoid the further infection, further microbial infection to that area. So this is an agent which will kill or inhibit the growth of microorganism when it is applied on the damaged tissue. Now the second class or the second definition is disinfectant. What are disinfectant? These are the agents which will destroy the microorganism, but not usually bacteria spores. So they will destroy the microorganism, they will kill, they will stop the growth of microorganism, but they are unable to kill the bacterial spores. Intact bacteria, they are unable to kill those intact bacteria. Now, the third class of antibacterial agent is germicides. So what are those germicides? So these are the agents which will kill the microorganism, and they are classified as bacteriocide, already we have discussed, bacteriostatic, which will stop the growth of microorganism. So there may be sporicides, which will kill the spores of microorganism, viricides, which will kill the virus, and which will kill the fungus infection also. So germicides kill the microorganism and classified into several cases: bacteriocides, sporicides, viricides, and fungicides. So it is a major class of the compound which will kill the bacteria, viruses, microorganisms, and fungus also. Now, the next terminology is sterilization. It is total removal and destruction of all the living microorganisms by generally chemical and mechanical processes. So we can sterilize the surface of the table, we can sterilize the room, we can sterilize the instrument, we can sterilize the utensils, surgical instruments. So it is nothing but the complete removal of the microorganism, and this is done by chemical and mechanical processes. Now, what is the mechanism of action of all these microorganisms? Very important point for the 10 marks, 8 marks question. It is there for your exam for the semester as well as periodic. It is very important from the exam point of view. What is the mechanism of action of antimicrobial agents? Basically, these are all antimicrobial agents act by three mechanisms: oxidation, halogenation, and protein precipitation. So most of the topical anti-infective agents do their mechanism by these three processes: oxidation, halogenation, and protein precipitation. Now, what is the meaning of the word oxidation, or how the oxidation procedure will helps as an antimicrobial agent? So oxygen liberating compounds, we all know that is oxidizing agents. So give their action by antimicrobial action by which will cause the oxidation of active functional group which is present in the bacterial cell. So all the bacteria, viruses will have their own proteinous material into their cell to digest, to multiply their cells. So what these oxidizing agents will do? So this oxidizing agent will oxidize active functional group in that cell protein or the enzymes and inactivating them. For example, how these oxidizing agents will act? The sulfahydryl functional group of cysteine, as cysteine is present in various of bacteria and viruses as a one of the component of the cell. So it will oxidize the sulfahydryl functional group which is present in the cell structure into disulfide linkage. So these oxidizing agents which will oxidize this sulfahydryl functional group to disulfide linkage and inactivate them after oxidation. So this is a normal structure of protein which is present in the cell of that bacteria, virus, microorganisms, pathogens. But after oxidation, he will oxidize this active functional group in the cell of that cell, and it is converted into disulfide linkage so that there is inactivation of this protein will be taken place. So this is the first mechanism of as an antimicrobial, anti-infective agent. Second mechanism of anti-infective agent is halogenation. How they will cause the death of microorganisms, or how they are going to prevent the growth of these microorganisms. So the halide, that is halogen containing functional groups, and hypohalide liberating compounds will act as an anti-infective agent by this following mechanism. Now these agents have halide functional group and they will act upon the nitrogen which is present in the structure of protein. Now we all know protein is going to have the peptide linkage, and this is a peptide linkage. CONH is the peptide linkage which is present in the structure of protein. Now this peptide linkage on the nitrogen atom of this peptide linkage where there is presence of hydrogen, after halogenation or the halogen containing compounds as an antimicrobials, they will act, they will replace this hydrogen with the help of these halide functional group, and due to the replacement of this halide functional group in the structure of protein, they will inactivate this protein. So due to the inactivation and structural change in the protein structures, so it will inactivate, it will kill this protein structure of that microorganism. So in this way, via halogenation mechanism, they are going to act as a antimicrobial agent. And third and very important mechanism of action of antimicrobial agents is metal containing compounds give this action by this mechanism. That is precipitation of the proteins. So the metal which is there is as an antimicrobial, it will bind with the protein structure and he is going to form the complex with the protein structure. See here, if the protein is going to possess sulfahydryl functional group and amine functional group, free amine functional group. So this, due to the presence of lone pair of electrons on these elements or atoms which are there in the protein structure. So what this metal ion will do? This metal ion will share the electrons of these sharing species of electrons and form a complex structure. And after complexation, they are going to change the structure of protein. By this mechanism, they are going to kill that microorganism or stop the growth of that microorganism. Now, these are the examples of several compounds which are there for our syllabus as an antimicrobial agents. Now, already we have discussed the three important mechanisms as an antimicrobial agent: oxidation mechanism, halogenation mechanism, and protein precipitation mechanism. Now, these are some of the examples of the compounds, that is hydrogen peroxide, potassium permanganate, sodium perborate, acting by oxidation mechanism. Then precipitation of protein mechanism is boric acid, borax, silver nitrate. Then halogenation, iodine and its various compounds, povidone iodine solution, potassium iodide, and calcium oxychloride. So these are all the several compounds used as an antimicrobial agent. So out of this, some are there for our syllabus to discuss in depth about those antimicrobial agents. So first, we are going to discuss the first compound, that is hydrogen peroxide. Now the physical and chemical properties of this hydrogen peroxide. Now we all know the hydrogen peroxide, it is used to clean the wound or cuts of our body. Since long we are using this chemical to clean the wound surface, to remove the debris from the wound, to remove the dead cell from the wound, to remove the blood clotting from the wound in order to increase the healing procedure of the wounds. So these are some of the physical and chemical properties of the hydrogen peroxide. Basically, it is a colorless liquid which is acidic in test. It is going to melt at 272 degree Kelvin, and boiling point of this hydrogen peroxide is 423 degree Kelvin. It is miscible in water in all the proportion and going to form the hydrates. So it is completely dissolved and miscible in water in all the proportions. So that means 100 ml of hydrogen peroxide can be dissolved, can be miscible with 100 ml of water. 100% total miscibility is there with the hydrogen peroxide. So it is rapidly decomposed on coming in contact with oxidizable matter. So it is going to rapidly decompose when it is coming in contact with the oxidizable matter, and it will decompose if the hydrogen peroxide will undergo decomposition reaction. So there is formation of a water molecule and oxygen, there is a result. Now some of the chemical properties of this hydrogen peroxide. It slowly decomposes at ordinary temperature to form the water and oxygen. It is reacting either as an oxidizing and reducing agent. See, the structure of hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. So it can be act as an reducing agent as well as it can be act as an oxidizing agent. It is totally depending upon which type of chemical environment is there. Suppose if the environment is reducing, so it is going to act as a reducing agent. If the environment is oxidizing in nature, so it is going to act as an oxidizing agent. So H2O2, that is hydrogen peroxide, oxidizes potassium iodide to iodine in acidic medium. Suppose we are going to provide the acidic medium, that time hydrogen peroxide will oxidize potassium iodide to iodine in the acidic medium. Then also it will oxidize the lead sulfide to the lead sulfate. So it is going to oxidize the lead sulfide to the lead sulfate. Then hydrogen peroxide also oxidizes ferrous to the ferric ion. So these are some of the examples of oxidizing reactions. Again, already we have discussed, depending upon the environment, it is going to act as an oxidizing agent. So already we have seen some of the oxidation reaction, that is conversion of ferric to ferrous, then conversion of lead sulfide to lead sulfate. Then for the reduction reaction, hydrogen peroxide reduces silver oxide to metallic silver. So it will reduce the silver oxide to the silver. It will reduce potassium permanganate to the magnesium sulfate, that is colorless. Then it will reduce hydrogen peroxide to the halides, that is hydroiodic acid. So it will reduce the iodine back to the hydroiodic acid and oxygen. So these are some of the oxidizing and reducing reactions depending upon the chemical environment in the reaction. It is acting as an oxidizing agent as well as reducing agents. Now, synthesis or the formation of hydrogen peroxide. So the formation of hydrogen peroxide, first method is from sodium peroxide. So the sodium peroxide is gradually added to an ice cold solution of sulfuric acid. When we are going to add sodium peroxide to the solution of sulfuric acid, there is formation of an hydrogen peroxide along with sodium sulfate. Now, upon cooling, the crystals of sodium sulfate separate out and resulting solution contains the hydrogen peroxide solution. So the solution also contains some dissolved sodium sulfate, but as an impurity, but it does not interfere with the reaction of hydrogen peroxide. Although it is there, the presence of sodium sulfate, it will not interfere in the reaction of hydrogen peroxide. A pure sample of hydrogen peroxide, however, prepared by vacuum distillation. So we can separate out hydrogen peroxide from the sodium sulfate impurity by the process of vacuum distillation. Now the second method of synthesis of hydrogen peroxide is from barium peroxide. Now the thin aqueous cream of barium peroxide with a cold dilute sulfuric acid, whenever there is reaction between barium peroxide and sulfuric acid, so there is formation of an barium sulfate and hydrogen peroxide. When carbon dioxide is passed slowly through the ice cold paste of barium peroxide, as well also there is formation of an hydrogen peroxide. So these are some of the synthetic methods for the formation or the generation of hydrogen peroxide. Now, assay procedure of this hydrogen peroxide. How we are going to check the percent purity of this hydrogen peroxide? Then hydrogen peroxide is titrated with standard solution of potassium permanganate. The assay procedure for the checking the purity of hydrogen peroxide is it is titrated with potassium permanganate in the presence of sulfuric acid at room temperature. So potassium itself acts as an indicator and the endpoint is permanent pink color. So when this potassium permanganate will react with sulfuric acid and water, that is hydrogen peroxide, so there is a titration and there is permanent pink color will be produced. Hydrogen peroxide used as an disinfectant, we all know, as an anti-infective and deodorant. It is used in eardrops, have been used for the removal of the wax. Then it is used as mouthwash and for the treatment of acute stomatitis and deodorant gargle. To remove the bad odor of our mouth, it is used as a deodorant gargle. So these are some of the uses of hydrogen peroxide. Our second compound is potassium permanganate, which is going to be used as an antimicrobial agent. Now the salt of this potassium permanganate is known as permanganate of potash. The permanganate ion is strong oxidizing agent. So this potassium permanganate, hydrogen peroxide, both of them acting as an antimicrobial agent by which mechanism? That is oxidation mechanism. So these permanganate ions are going to act as an oxidizing agent. They will dissolve in water to give the purple color. And evaporation of which gives prismatic purplish black glistering crystals. So it has a sweet flavor and sweet astringent taste for this potassium permanganate. So the uses of potassium permanganate, it is act as an disinfectant, deodorant, as an astringent, anti-infective, and bactericidal. Solutions are used to clean the ulcers or abscesses as a wet dressing and in bath in eczematic condition. So whenever there is eczema type of situation, we can take a bath of potassium permanganate to remove the fungus and eczema from our body. So it is basically we all know the appearance of the potassium permanganate. It is dark purple crystals, odorless and having a sweet astringent taste. Chemical properties, they will decompose at high temperature into dipotassium permanganate, that is K2MnO4, MnO2 and oxygen. For example, the potassium permanganate, if it is oxidizing or it is used as an oxidizing agent, it will oxidize as potassium iodide to the iodine in the acidic medium. As like that of hydrogen peroxide, this is also going to oxidize the potassium iodide into iodine. So some of the preparations of hydrogen peroxide, potassium permanganate is prepared by heating potassium hydroxide with manganese dioxide in the presence of air oxidizing agents such as potassium nitrate or potassium chlorate. So potassium hydroxide, when it is treated with magnesium oxide, there is formation of an potassium permanganate takes place. The greenish product of potassium manganate is extracted with water and treated with carbon dioxide or ozonized air to precipitate about 1/3 of the manganese as the hydrated dioxide. The remaining manganese is converted into potassium permanganate. If chlorine reactions of or reaction for the synthesis of potassium permanganate, if we are going to pass the chlorine through the solution of carbon dioxide, and whole of the manganese is converted into permanganate. So this is potassium manganate. That is, if we are going to pass the chlorine gas, so this will be converted into potassium permanganate. Then manganate can also be converted into permanganate by electrolyzing a warm solution. So simply in the presence of water, if we are going to warm the solution of manganate, potassium manganate, so it is converted into potassium permanganate. Now, some of the preparations of potassium permanganate are: it is manufactured on the large scale due to manifold uses in the laboratory, in the first stage, in the pyrolusite, which is manganese dioxide in its natural form. It is used with potassium hydroxide in heated air or with potassium nitrate as a source of oxygen. For the source of oxygen, it is going to be used along with potassium hydroxide and potassium nitrate. This leads to the formation of an potassium manganate, which on electrolytic condition or an alkaline solution gives potassium permanganate. It is prepared by treating a solution of manganese with very strong oxidizing agent like lead oxide, sodium bismuth, and these reactions have been used to test the presence of manganese due to the formation of distinctly violet color of permanganate. Now, almost all the applications of potassium permanganate are derived from its being as an oxidizing agent. As we all know, potassium permanganate is oxidizing agent. So all the chemical reactions, all its uses as an antimicrobial, anti-infective agent is due to its oxidizing property. Now, assay of potassium permanganate. Now we all know potassium permanganate is oxidizing agent, so it is based upon the redox type of titration, which is carried out with the standard solution of oxalic acid in the presence of sulfuric acid at 70 degrees centigrade throughout the entire titration. So the potassium permanganate is titrated with oxalic acid in the presence of sulfuric acid at 70 degrees centigrade, and in the assay of potassium permanganate itself serves as an indicator. So this potassium permanganate is act as a self-indicator for its titration. Whenever we are using potassium permanganate for any titration, potassium permanganate is used as a self-indicator. So the factor for the calculation of assay limit is each ml of 0.1 normal oxalic acid, it is equivalent to the 0.00316 grams of potassium permanganate. So these are the two important products which we have discussed as an antimicrobial agents are hydrogen peroxide and potassium permanganate. Now the third very important product as an antimicrobial agent is boric acid. It occurs as a colorless white crystals with a white powder with a slight acidic and bitter taste. Then it is freely soluble in the glycerol and partially soluble in the water and alcohol. Various dehydration products obtained by heating boric acid with the loss of water include. That's why, as it is used as a dehydrating agent, that's why we are going to use this boric acid or boric powder for the preservation of food material, preservation of cereals, wheat, all these food products for longer period of time. So various dehydration products obtained by heating boric acid with the loss of water. So the dehydration products of boric acid are metaboric acid at 100 degrees centigrade, tetraboric acid at 160 degrees centigrade, and boron trioxide more than 160 degrees centigrade. So we can convert boric acid into these three series of compounds: metaboric acid, tetraboric acid, and boron trifluoride. Metaboric acid, HbO2, tetraboric H2B4O7, and boron dioxide, it will be obtained higher than the temperature of more than 160 degrees centigrade. So the preparation of boric acid can be prepared by adding a mixture of sulfuric acid and water to the boiling solution of borax. So whenever there is reaction between the borax, sulfuric acid and water, so there is formation of a boric acid. Boric acid also prepared by with a mineral acid such as hydrochloric acid. The obtained white crystals of boric acid are completely insoluble in the cold water. Now the assay procedure for the boric acid is, it is assayed by titrimetric method, being very weak acid. It cannot be directly titrated with a strong alkali. As it is a weak acid, it is not directly treated with the alkali. When it is dissolved in a mixture of water and glycerin, it behaves like a strong monobasic acid. Before do the direct titration of boric acid and strong alkali, we are going to dissolve this boric acid in a mixture of glycerin and water. So that time it is going to be behave as a monobasic acid. And then it can be titrated with the alkali by using phenolphthalein solution till the permanent faint pink color is produced. So the factor for the calculation of assay limit is each ml of 1 normal sodium hydroxide is equivalent to 0.0618 grams of boric acid. So it is used as a local anti-infective agent. It is used as an germicide in the dusting powders, as an antiseptic. So it is used as an ophthalmic preparation, as a buffer solution. It can be very dangerous, not for the internal use, as it is going to be act as an acidic agent in nature. So it is very dangerous for the internal use. So these three compounds we have discussed today along with their mechanical and antimicrobial agents.